All right, so this is the story of the Israelites complaining after about 6 weeks being in the wilderness, after being freed from slavery. They find themselves hungry and they're murmuring and grumbling, which is the Hebrew words. Basically. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And the Lord hears this and calls Moses and Aaron together and says, like, listen, they're complaining, but I'm gonna give them what they need, and I'm gonna rain bread from heaven, and each day they will go out and gather what they need, and that will be a way I can test them, whether or not they're gonna follow instruction. And then on the 6th day, they are to get twice as much so they can have Sabbath. So Moses and Aaron gather the people and say, hey, this is what the Lord has told us. You explain this part. I really liked how we were chatting earlier. I really like what you were saying about...
And what she means by we chatted earlier was recorded the entire episode and it didn't record. So, yeah. So we're redoing it. So I think Moses and Aaron probably heard the people complaining, or they might have talked to them, but it's sort of like there's this idea that Moses and Aaron, like, they're complaining against them, not to them,
right,
is the way the text says it. And so they're saying, like, you brought us out into this wilderness to kill us with hunger. And if only we could go back to Egypt, at least we have food. We didn't have freedom, but we had food.
Yeah.
And you've brought us out. So they're grumbling against them. I like to think, like, wouldn't it be kind of interesting if Moses and Aaron hadn't heard from the people, but then God calls them and God says, like, the people have been grumbling about you. And that's when they first find out. I thought that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
But then God responds with provision, and God says, okay, here you go. There's going to be bread that rains down. Mm-hmm. And also quail.
Yep.
There's going to be birds that will fall out of the sky, and you'll have meat to eat in the evening and manna to eat, or bread from heaven.
Bread from heaven, yeah.
God doesn't call it manna.
No, the people call it manna.
Right.
They come out after getting before that. No, it's okay. Before that, basically, Aaron, because Moses is like, speak for me, speak to the people on my behalf, or on behalf of the Lord. Aaron says, this is the message we've gotten from God, and so if this happens, it's, this is God that's done it.
Right, because they're trying to, like, it feels as though Moses and Aaron are trying to get themselves off the hook a little bit.
Yeah.
To say, like, if...
we didn't lead you here.
Right, God led you here.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen. We believe it'll happen, but, if it doesn't, like, it's not God. It's not us. Like, don't complain about us. Complain about what God's doing.
Yes.
But also the other side of that is that if this does happen, then mm-hmm. God gets the credit too. Like, God is the one who's providing. It's
mm-hmm.
not us. But
yeah,
there's kind of two sides to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of fun.
We should do that.
I'm down with that.
We should do that with the church.
See how that goes.
It's not us. I'm pretty sure God told us to do this.
We'll see how that works out. They didn't have a session to respond to. But so they say, okay, God's going to rain this bread from heaven. And so the next morning they get up and there's dew on the ground, the dew lifts, and there's this flaky substance that's kind of like frost looking on the grass or whatever the ground is. Right. And they come out of their tents and they're like, what? Isn't that what you said the translation is?
Good translation for this is, huh?
That's great.
What?
So manna, what is it?
So that, just to be clear, that's the actual, the word manna is a Hebrew word that means what? Or what is it?
Yeah.
What is it? They come out, they see the stuff on the ground, and then, what is this?
This is the bread we told you about.
Right.
Go and gather it. So then they get the instructions. This is beyond our text for today, but they get the instructions of what to do with all of that. Which we've already received a little tiny bit of the instruction of gather it daily, what you need, and then on the 6th day you're going to gather twice as much so that you can have rest. And so they have this further detailed instruction, and some of them follow that and some of them don't. And so on day 5, they think, oh, I'm going to gather extra, and then what is for day 6? And then they go out in the morning and it's all spoiled and rotten and it's gross. And then on day 6 they think, I'm just going to go out on day 7 and collect more, and they go out and there's nothing there.
Right. So it's only on day 6, the day before the Sabbath. That's the only day that they're supposed to gather
more
extra.
Exactly.
For the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Other days, any extra that they can't save it day to day.
No.
Except that one day a week.
Yeah, so I mean, like, true provision from God. Right. And something we had talked about previously that I definitely want to highlight again is the unlearning of, that's what I want to talk about, the unlearning of what their experience was. They
like
always
I kind of feel like in this story, the beginning of the wilderness, like, it's pretty early on. They don't have the 10 commandments yet. They don't have any commandments yet.
Right.
And I see that as like, those are the instructions from God about how they are formed as a people. So God is already starting to form them as a people. Like, they've come out of slavery, and now it's kind of getting back to square one. Well, who are we then? Like, so. And everything is stripped away, including even, like, they don't have the food to eat, and then God is providing that on a daily basis, but with this little tweak on day 6 of, like, there's going to be double, and that you can collect that day. And so it's just like stripping away to the very basics of, like, okay, this is what you're going to be, and this is the rhythm and pattern of your life now. It's not 24/7, 7 days a week working. That was what it was when you were a slave.
Right. Now
you are God's people, and you are going to be formed by this rhythm of you gather 6 days and you rest for 1. And they don't really get it.
No.
Because they haven't lived that way. They've lived this life of hard labor. Yeah. And now suddenly it's this gracious provision, and even on the 7th day, total rest. And they've never lived rest. So it's like, really? So some of them still go out there and are trying to gather things and nothing's there. And what do we do? Like, they're having to be reformed. They're having to unlearn. Like, that's the unlearn. They're having to unlearn what it was like before. Absolutely. To now be rebuilt into God's actual vision for people, which you find, like, right at the beginning of Genesis, right? Like, at the beginning of Genesis.
Yeah, it starts off with
Sabbath
this.
Is instituted there.
Yeah.
And this is now a reminder.
It's like a reintroduction to...
Right, and then it becomes one of the 10 commandments as well, right? So there's a Sabbath commandment, but you're getting this before the commandment.
Yeah, and something we talked about too was, and that I want to talk about, is like sending. And if we're being sent, what does that look like in this text? And what is the act of sending? And so, a simple way to test, are they going to be obedient to this instruction I give, is like, go collect what you need for the day, twice as much on the one day, and rest, period. That's what your instruction is. And sometimes I think as we move into leadership in different ways, in sometimes smaller ways or larger ways, I think sometimes we're like, I really want to serve, I'm gung-ho, and then we receive like a really small thing to do, and it feels like, well, no, that can't be, like, it needs to be bigger. Right. And we fail the small tests that build up this trust of I think, like, because it is a relationship we have with the creator of the universe, that it's important for us to trust in the instruction, and before God can give us bigger things, to trust that we will follow that instruction as well.
Yeah, I think when we think about being sent people and going out, we can for sure make that really complicated. Yeah. And even, like, in how we might describe this text, like I was noticing as you were describing, like, what happens on the different days, even our description becomes complicated of what's happening, but all that's happening is collect double on the 6th day, and then you don't have to collect on the 7th day. Right. But you can see that what would happen with the people is, well, a bunch of them are like, day 3, they're going out there like, oh, I'm going to save some of this because who knows when this gravy train's going to stop. We second guess, we come up with our own strategies, our own plans, instead of, like, following through. Yeah. And we'll also become impatient with, like, Yeah, we've lived this for 3 days. This can't keep going on. You know, like, but we do that all
It's
the
so
time.
true.
Especially when it's the unknown. Like often when we're sent out, there's risk and there's unknown, and it's hard to trust. And the Sabbath, I think, as well, is kind of a pinnacle, not a pinnacle, like a way of learning to trust God, like trusting that if we take time off, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
God is going to take care of things. It's fine. But it's also like, I feel like the preparation side of Sabbath is important as well. So it's not that trusting God means, well, we don't have to worry about anything before taking time off. Like, they still had to gather double portion. It wasn't that you miraculously won't be hungry on the seventh day and you won't have to eat that day because it's day of rest.
Yeah.
No. It's the work to get the food is going to happen the day before. So you actually have to do more work that day.
Yeah.
And you have to prepare for the Sabbath. And we've lost that idea of preparing for rest and planning for rest. Not just lost the idea of resting, but it used to be embedded in the culture that we had a day of preparation for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
All the way back to like the story, basically.
Yes.
Thousands of years. But it's only fairly recently that we've lost the idea of a full day of rest and a day to prepare for it.
Yes.
And we need to reclaim that. It might not be reclaimed like in our society, but I think
as God's people,
I think we can reclaim those
Amen.
things, right?
Absolutely. And I've really been thinking a lot about like having our imaginations opened to actually receiving what God has in mind for us, and imagining our world in a different way, and imagining the kingdom here. I'm getting that strong sense that like Sabbath is super important. Obviously, if it was how God, ordained things, and it's in the 10 Commandments, right?
Well, and you have preparation for the Sabbath, but then I think also Sabbath becomes preparation for work. So again, back to the idea of being sent out by God. When God sends you into the world to serve others, or to whatever it is God is calling and leading you towards for your life, this resting is part of the preparation in order to do that. Like, without that, it becomes really hard. Without that root and that grounding in God and finding that in a day or in a period of time, it's really hard to actually go out and do that work and work for the kingdom.
It's true, and it's easy for us to get burnt out.
Oh yeah.
That's for sure.
And I actually think we use Sabbath like as a release valve for burnout, and I think we can do that. Like, I think that's fine, but I think it's better if it's flipped the other way.
As a recharging.
No. I think, like, yes. Okay, so you've got release valve is on one end.
Yeah.
And then you've got like recharging. That's good.
Yeah.
But I actually think we should. It's not like this in the Bible, actually, but the Sabbath's at the end of the week in the Bible. But I actually think the Christian Sabbath, like the day of resurrection, which is why we moved. Like, the Sabbath is actually Saturday. Christians moved it to Sunday because Jesus was raised on the day after.
Right.
And so that became the Christian Sabbath. And I kind of like that because it's the start of the week. So the start of our lives is actually resting in God. And then our work flows out of that, as opposed to we work, and now I need a rest.
I love that you say that it's like in the Christian calendar, Sunday is the first day of the week. And our calendars, physical calendars we hang on the wall, Sunday's the first day of the week.
Right.
But society, it's actually Monday. Sunday is your last day of the weekend.
I know I can choose that on my calendar app if I want Monday.
Really? To shift it?
You can shift it in like Google Calendar and stuff.
Interesting.
I never shift it.
No, because it would feel weird. But it is different. Like, it's an interesting bubble to live in, like, the kingdom is partially here and still not yet, of Sunday being like, well, it's the end of the weekend, the work week starts up again, but it's also our day one of refueling us for,
because it's actually both.
Yeah, well, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, in good Christian tradition, it's both and.
I love the both and.
So like the Sabbath is actually, we've been talking here because we've been talking in the Hebrew scriptures, is the day 7.
Yeah.
But in the Christian way of reframing that, it's actually the 8th day. Like the Sabbath is the 8th day.
Now my brain hurts. What do you mean the Sabbath is the 8th day?
Because it's also the first day.
Oh, the both and.
Right.
Crazy. Well, that's a mystical calendar.
There you go. There you go. But I also want to return right to the very beginning of God's fundamental
yes, please.
Promise.
Yeah.
As the people complain, and why I think we need to take our complaints to God, and our grumblings, and our we're walking around like, oh, I can't believe this is what's going on in my life, and we're talking about rest here, and there's people listening thinking, oh, I never get any rest, and there's no way for me to do it. That kind of grumbling is what is at the beginning of this story, and God's response is I think there's like 2 responses here, but the first and primary response is to actually address the need of the people.
Right.
He addresses where their complaint is. He hears their complaint and provides them with this food. They're hungry, and he feeds them. And the secondary one is the thing about, I'm going to start testing them. And I like this as learning, not as testing, which is what real tests are actually about. When you think of school, it's supposed to be about learning.
Yeah.
But he begins to teach them this new pattern. It's like an opportunity of teachable moment. We're gonna help them not just learn that I'm providing, but also to start teaching about this.
Yeah. I really love the unlearning something, because as I feel like unlearning is a massive theme right now in society of unlearning the ways things are, and I think that's why imagination is so important to me right now, is this imagining something new. But we also see that God has been listening and providing in different ways previous to this. We saw that last week with, even before that, when he listens. Okay, I've heard my people complaining about the slavery going on, it's been
ongoing.
Yeah, centuries. So there is this theme of this, and we see it throughout in the Psalms as well, of course.
When we talked about this before, you kind of brought us back to verse 9 as well, which I think is kind of a good place to end.
Right, yes. So Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining." So it's important for us to draw near, to prepare and engage in and allow for Sabbath to happen in our lives. Allow for us to unlearn the things that society has imposed upon us. This is going to be a weird little bubble of time out of sequence because we've pre-recorded this. I'm going to be preaching very soon about do not be transformed. Or I guess just a couple of weeks ago, do not be conformed. Do not be conformed. Yes.
But be transformed.
To the ways of this world. And so that's certainly something that we've been conformed to that is not helpful for the gospel. And for our health and well-being. Let's imagine something new.
I think I also like that the idea of draw near to the Lord, it actually does connect to Sabbath. We actually need to figure out how do we clear some of the things off in order to have that time where we actually do draw near to God.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that's the first thing. Moses and Aaron don't initially come to the people to say, okay, here's the plan.
Right.
Here's the steps for gathering this stuff that's going to show up. The first thing they say is, draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. So I think we need to do that too.
It's very true.
Start there.
And then once we do that, God provides, and then we receive instructions of
and the
what's
steps
next.
are there, thinking about being sent people.
Yeah.
The first thing is not well, how do I know what to do?
Draw near to the Lord.
Draw near to the Lord. And then the next things.
Yeah.
Right.
And rest. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. And rest, for sure. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.